Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Green Room. We are live with DisrupTV, episode number 372 with Chris Morgan, Mo Bunnell, Dominic, and Vala Afshar-R. And of course, I butchered all their names, and we'll find out what their real names are when we're here in the Green Room doing introductions. We do this in reverse order every time. And of course, we're going to start with Mo. Mo, pronounce your last name so I get it right. And of course, where are you coming from? What are we talking about today?
You got it. Mo Bunnell. And what we do at Bunnell Idea Group, or BIG for short, is train high-end experts how to grow a book of business in the way that they can actually enjoy, using authenticity and generosity. Our new book, Give to Grow, is just about out. It'll be out very soon, in about 2 weeks. And I think that's what we'll talk a little bit about today.
Very, very cool. We get the preview. We're super excited. All right. Chris, where are you coming in from? What are we talking about today?
Hey, I am in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm the Associate Vice President of Jenzabar. At Jenzibar, we serve higher education, about a quarter of the higher education schools in the U.S. And we're here to talk about technology-based education and why it's becoming more and more important, and also non-traditional learners and how we serve.
Excellent. Amazing. All right, Laura, Dominic, I'll start with Laura. Where are you coming in from? What are we talking about?
Hi, we are coming in from the UK. We're based right in the middle near Shakespeare's Stratford-upon-Avon. It's probably best well known to your listeners. And what we're talking about today really is how to unleash the potential of everyone. And what we really are focused on is how to get every workplace to have an epic workplace culture, a coaching culture built by star managers. And we're focused on developing all managers and leaders globally to adopt something that's called operational coaching. It's a new scientifically proven form of coaching that you can do in the flow of work, even if you're extremely busy leader or manager. And it's recognized now as a massive new management practice.
All right, Dominic, what about you? I think you might be next door.
Hi, glad to be here. I'm not sure I've got much to add to that. I think Laura mentioned there the research. We were actually very privileged to win significant government research into the approach we've developed over the last 15 years. And boy, I think the challenges that all the managers and leaders out there are facing right now with 50% burnout means that the time has really come for us to really be looking at what we're actually doing and how we're working. So I think we're going to talk a bit more about that and some of the challenges, and perhaps a better and newer way perhaps of trying to do things.
Very cool. Looking forward to hearing about the methodology. Okay, with that, we're going to kick off. We're going to go to a short video, and then of course we'll start with Laura and Dominic. All right, get ready? 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Disrupt TV. I'm Wang, your host today for the show. And of course, my co-host Vala Afshar will be back next week for the next episode. We're here. And of course, we are one of the top weekly podcasts. We air live every 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on Friday. And of course, you can expect A-list guests, latest enterprise news, startups, influencers, authors, leaders, and more. And of course, you can follow us live on all our social channels. So with that, we're going to introduce our first set of guests. And of course, they're coming live from the UK. We got Vala Afshar-R and Dominic Ashley-Timms are co-author of The Answer is a Question. And I'll do Laura's bio first, and of course, welcome her, and of course, welcome Dominic as well. As you can imagine, these are the nationally recognized as one of the UK's top executive coaches and co-creators of the STAR model in 2010. I've used that before. It's a STAR manager program. And of course, She's an expert and thought leader on how to leverage operational coaching behaviors across organizations to drive commercial results and improve productivity. Also the co-founder and COO of Notion, a performance management consultancy built in 2000. Laura is regularly invited to speak and delivers inspirational keynotes with clients, organizations, and at business conferences, of course. So she's the author of this book where we're going to talk about, co-author of The Answer is a Question, the missing superpower that changes everything and will transform your impact as a manager and leader. So we're going to welcome you to the show. Thank you very much for being here, Laura.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for inviting us.
We've got the other half, better or worse, we'll find out soon. Dominic Ashley-Timms, he's the founder and CEO of Notion as well, a performance improvement specialist that works directly with leaders and managers. Of course, he's a ergonomist, which I want to know more about from IMD, and of course spent time doing change management consulting, and of course this is transformational. Having built Notion into a performance improvement powerhouse, you guys are now helping large-scale change programs with the FTSE and of course F500 companies, from banking to chemical manufacturing. So, and I want to know more about the STAR model, but more importantly, we're talking about the book today. The Answer is a Question. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Now, we got a number of questions we can ask with you, but I think the most important one really here is, why the book? Why now? What are we talking about here?
Well, most of your listeners out there, I'm guessing a proportion of them will be managers and leaders in their own right. And it can't escape anyone that the pressures that we're all facing in the workplace are just mounting. And also since COVID, so much has changed. And when organizations want to affect any change, it's the managers and the leaders that falls upon. And so there's been layers and layers of work placed onto managers. And what we're finding is that the rates of burnout now are increasing. And in a recent, very large scale piece of research by Microsoft across 11 countries, they determined that 50% of all managers and leaders report feeling burnt out. So something needs to have changed. And for the last 15 years, we've been focused exactly on how can managers engage respectfully with their teams in a way that pulls from them their talents and brings that into an organization, but at the same time allows them to decompress. So that's very much the work we're focused on. It's the basis of the STAR model, which Laura can speak more about.
Yeah, let's talk about the STAR model, because I think it's important. You guys said used by the FTSE and LSE folks. So I'm kind of curious as to who in the LSE is using this.
So yeah, the STAR model came about because we were really doing quite a lot of research into why coaching wasn't working and wasn't really making the changes that everyone expected it to make. So we're all kind of using executive coaches, and we are maybe even internal coaches in our organization. And what really happened is we were investing, as all organizations, a huge amount of money, up to billions of pounds, in coaching, but there was no long-term sustainable change and no cultural shift in the capability of managers and leaders at large scale. So we kind of looked into this and realized that all the coaching models, which are based around the model GROW, or a derivative of the model GROW, were all focused on the coachee, on the other person. So STAR was really designed as an absolute in the moment coaching model for managers. So it's 100% focused on managers who can't just become coaches. It's much more important that they are still, they hold the agenda to drive their area, to drive the organization they're running, or to drive their department. So they can't just be there as a coach for the coach, for the other person. So really what STAR's about is it's a 4-step model to help the manager to change what they're doing in the moment, to stop. So STAR stands for stop, which is stop, change state. Don't rush in as soon as someone gives you a problem, and be the knight in shining armor to go and fix all the problems, take on all the work yourself. So we have to first of all teach ourselves to stop, and in that moment, in that second, to think, is this a coachable moment? Could I ask a question now instead of telling someone what to do? And if the answer is yes, and if you're working in a hospital or in an emergency situation, it's possible it's not yes, but for most of us, the answer is going to be yes most of the time. And you can embed that behavioral change of stop and think in a split second. Then you can get into the real juicy stuff, the A, which is for ask and actively listening. So A is all about really learning to craft questions, powerful questions, but not just questions that are giving you data or information, but learning to craft a question that is really for the benefit of the other person, to give them insights, to help them have ideas, and then own those ideas. And then R is for result, which is as a manager, as a leader, it's a waste of a conversation if there's no next step. So R is really getting back in to that leader and manager mindset of how to help the other person make a next step, however small it is. And that is the essence of the STAR model.
You know, one of my colleagues, Vala Afshar R, he loves to talk about flow. He wrote a book called Boundless, which is all about that flow state. You guys talk about putting this into flow. What does that mean, Dominic? And why is that important?
Yeah, that's a great question. As we go throughout our day, we typically in busy environments have about 16 to 20 different interactions a day. And what we're talking about is being present in the moment, even for just a small handful of those, where we are stopping to think about the person in front of us right now and actually what do they need from me right now? Do they actually need me to direct them? Or if I do that, am I robbing them of something? Is it not better perhaps for me to think about how can I ask them a question which will stimulate their thinking in that moment? And that's what we mean about bringing coaching into the flow of work. We're teaching managers to adapt their behavior. So throughout the day, they're becoming present, they're stopping in the moment, they're thinking, they're asking a powerful question. And if you can imagine, if we interact with a typical group of people throughout a week, throughout a month, if we just adapt a small handful of those conversations a day, then you can see that we're changing the dynamic between how we're working with colleagues, and we're helping build their confidence as they come up with their own ideas and then implement them. So that's what we mean about bringing coaching into the flow of work. We're finding ways of seeing the people we work with, acknowledging their capability, asking them questions that help them then retain accountability for seeing through solving a problem themselves. And it's a really powerful approach. And what that does immediately is it forgives the manager from having to step into every single situation presented to them. And that's why it's a real change in our behavior. When people come to us, we feel obligated to step in and help. But every time we do that, we have to ask, are we actually helping, or are we potentially diminishing people or marginalizing them? And many people will feel that they're micromanaged by their managers. And this is one way of reversing that.
Well, it sounds like there's a big communication technique behind that, and how you ask a question. There's an art and science behind that. And that's fundamental to what you guys talk about, how you ask and don't tell. So what's the art and what's the science? I'll let you guys two figure out who wants to do art versus science.
Well, I think the science is really interesting. You mentioned you want to learn more about ergonomics. Dominic is an ergonomist, and it kind of filters into everything he does and think. And I will let him explain a little bit more about what that is. But I think what's really important is he was able to craft and design a model called Question. So the science behind how you really think about all the component parts of what would be in a question to drive different behavior. So let me give you an example maybe of three different questions. We've got this great kind of thing that comes with our program, which is some question cards called powerful question cards, which is to help embed this question concept in this question model. But different questions generate different outcomes. So let's say you're with someone, you want to shift perspectives, for example, help someone change their perspective on an issue or a problem. So a shift perspective question might be something like, what advice would you give to a colleague in your situation? So you're getting them to think not from themselves, but from someone else's perspective, and that will open some ideas for them. It might be that you want to change their context, to give them a different context, or change context question might be something like, imagine this had been achieved already. Looking back, what had to change? So you're getting them to move in time frames, to think differently, to instigate new insights. Other ones might be about challenging barriers. What is it that makes you think that? We're making assumptions the whole time about what we can and can't do, what we've got permission to do. So again, challenging that is another way you might approach it. And what Dominic's done with Question is been able to put together all of this into a learnable structure. And I'll let Dominic add to that.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. The study of ergonomics is a really unusual combination of sciences, but at its key center is focusing on the human being. So when we're looking at both learning and behavior, it's always focused on the outcome driven from the human being. And I go back to what I was saying about asking questions where we're potentially marginalizing people. Most of the time, because we're not trained, most of the time the questions we ask are diagnostic questions. We're asking questions to gather information so we as the manager can diagnose and solve the problem and offer guidance, a way forward. And essentially then we're sending people away to do our bidding. And this change that we're introducing is getting people to really shift that mental model to think about, how am I asking questions not for me to gather information, but to create appropriate insight and help stimulate that person thinking in the most helpful way to them right now, that will help stimulate some ideas and some thoughts that they probably know. We just need to unearth them about the way forward and the actions they can take. And then we support them to take those actions. We follow up, which now gives us an opportunity to give them some appreciative feedback. So this whole approach of implementing the STAR model is quite a benevolent cycle of seeing people, acknowledging them, drawing from them, supporting them to take action whilst they retain accountability, which then provides us an opportunity to provide some appreciative feedback. And little by little, we're providing the conditions where people can increase their confidence. And that's the beauty of the design of this. It's people-centric. It starts with the manager taking a very different position. Rather than feeling the need to direct, fix, and solve all the time, it's to support and enable other people.
Yeah, and this is important, right? Are the questions the key to being a better active listener? Because it sounds like you're using the questions to set it up. And you have a great quote, I mean, at the beginning of the book: between stimulus and response, there is space, and that space is our power to choose our response, and our response lies our growth and our freedom. And after reading the book and going back to that quote, it's really deep. So it really captures the essence of what you're trying to say. So asking that question forces the active listening? Or why don't you have managers that just ask the question to ask the question and don't even listen? Where do we go with that? Because I'm sure that happens a lot too.
It's a really, really good point. And actually, when we are working through the program in more detail and really embedding the capability of learning to ask powerful questions, the very next thing you learn is how to properly active listen. And that's why kind of A is for both, for asking questions and for active listening. And where we do talk quite a lot of detail, and we spend quite a lot of time helping managers and leaders really understand how to listen, not just for facts or for emotions, but how to listen intuitively, to really listen to what people aren't saying and what else is going on. And we do spend quite a lot of time really deep diving into the importance of that, and how, you know, if you are properly active listening, you can't do anything else. You've got no space for anything else if you're actively listening. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Ray. It's critical skill.
I think I might add to that if you can imagine, in the cut and thrust of a busy day, unless we are able to stop, unless we're able to put in those pattern interrupts where for a moment we become present in that moment, then it's almost impossible to find that moment to think about, what does this person in front of me need from me right now, and then ask a question. So that behavioral aspect of getting managers to stop throughout different points in the day, to build the triggers that get them to stop and acknowledge the person in front of them, is part of the challenge. Because in the hurly-burly of business, we're rushing to do a million things to keep the show on the road, keep the lights on, fix and solve the problems. And that's what we're talking about here. And that's the radical shift where we get managers to really change their mental model about what they're there to do and how they want to engage with people differently.
I think what's really...
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say what's really, really important. And I was in a meeting with a very senior production manager from one of the top studios in America. And what they said is, you can't unlearn it. Once you've embedded that behavioral change, that stop and think, you can never go back. You know, and once you've done it and you've understood it and you've built that absolute inherent understanding around STAR, you can never go back and kind of tell no. And whenever you're doing it, you know you shouldn't be doing it. It's like embedded in your brain forever.
So you're telling me there are thousands of alumni from the Royal Mail Group being able to do this today?
Absolutely.
One of the hardest places to make this work. That's congratulations.
Over the last 15 years, we've had the privilege of working often with very, very large groups of managers around the world. So there are STAR managers now in 40 different countries. And I think since COVID, there's been renewed interest in, what are we doing with our managers? And in fact, one of the challenges we put out to leadership is, have they asked the question, what do we want our expensive layers of management to be delivering for us? I think in a lot of cases, an assumption just takes hold that our managers are our super workers. They're the people that are going to bear that, with the wide shoulders, the broad shoulders, to bear the weight of what the organization needs them to do. We've never really asked, what do we really want them to do? How do we want them to engage with the rest of the workforce? How are we going to pull all of that talent that we've got into the organization? How are we going to release the potential of everyone? And that's where this approach, operational coaching, really takes hold. It's a new approach. It's a different mindset. And we have managers who've been through this program who've developed almost messianic zeal for their renewed purpose and how they go into work each day.
Wow, this is wonderful. We're here with Laura and Dominic Ashley-Timms, co-authors of the book. The answer is the question, and of course, the Star Manager approach. Thank you so much for coming in from the UK. I really appreciate your comments, wisdom, and of course, please get the book. You can find it on Amazon and wherever books are sold. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Wow. Super excitement here. Lots of leadership, lots of growth in this episode. And of course, you're going to hear more across our different guests. We're going to bring on Chris Morgan, of course, from Jenzabar. And thank you for being on the show. I'll do your quick introduction and, of course, go from there. But as you know, Chris is an AVP at Jenzabar. But more importantly, he's there for product innovation. And as you might know, Jenzabar, they're a technology and student information system. And of course, doing that especially for higher education. So he's been the EdTech work. You can find him at EduCause, camping out in booths if you haven't seen him there before. I have. He didn't know that. But anyways, prior to joining Jenzabar, Chris was the founder and managing partner of PaperScore, a provider of SaaS-based solutions, and of course, acquired by Classify Learning. So he's been in this EdTech space for a long time. And of course, he's held executive roles at other places like Solution Tree and Pearson, where my good buddy just became the CEO, Omar Abash. So anyways, hope you're doing well, Chris. We're going to kick off, talk about what's happening on your space and in your world. And more importantly, if you're following him and you want to follow him on, other areas, you can actually catch him on his site. So let's start something really quick. Education, investment in L&D and skills is a hot area. Everybody's talking about it. And of course, we're rapidly learning different technologies, different techniques. We just came back and heard a new technique for STAR. But how can we start with schools, right? How can schools invest in technology-based skills so that graduates are ready for the workplace? We often say schools are academic. You don't learn anything practical, but you guys have a way of looking at this in a different way, and you have a different philosophy. Let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, certainly schools, higher education is in a transition mode, and in some schools they do struggle, but a lot of schools are doing very well at keeping up with changing technology. So when we think about technologies first, it's not just the AI and the data science that you hear about in the news every day. Mm-hmm. It's things like actuaries and statisticians and nurse practitioners all have nuanced technologies that they have to learn, and universities tend to be very good at those areas. Where they struggle, in general, some do very well, but where they struggle is where there's a large economic reason for the markets to adapt quickly and change the technology rapidly or change the processes rapidly. It's hard for schools to change their curriculum as rapidly as the market changes. And also what we're seeing is a massive trend in the way that courses are taught, away from associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees and more toward micro-credentials and stackable credits. And so those are areas where we're seeing a lot of struggle, a lot of evolution happening very rapidly in higher education.
I say this jokingly. Doesn't everybody like a good didactic course? So what's going on with the technology skill side? I mean, it's all technology-based learning, right? But they're doing it differently. There's different types of doing it. And of course, I mean, doing it well, what does it lead to? What are the benefits?
Yeah, it's interesting to watch two major factors in the market right now that are driving the way things are taught, which I think is the basis of your question. One is just that, these technologies and what people are expecting in the workforce, the people hiring, is massively different. I was just talking yesterday to a college where I said, we still predominantly see assessments as multiple choice questions in classes, but never in my career have I been asked to take a multiple choice question to prove a skill. It's projects. We work in projects. So you're seeing a lot more projects-based learning being adopted.
Oh, yeah.
Some more than others. And you're seeing also that driven by artificial intelligence, Gen AI. So it's number one, we're not asked to write papers in most professions either. And we're not being able to prove your work, being able to demonstrate your work. So portfolios are a big part, and project-based learning is something that we're seeing a lot of adoption of.
So wait, so I can't take multiple choice tests anymore. Those were the best. I mean,
yeah.
So
they're very good for rote-based learning, and you need to do that. But when it comes down to synthesis of ideas and really showing and demonstrating to an employer, which is increasingly the focus for higher ed. It's no longer just provide a liberal arts education. There's nothing wrong with that, but also make sure I can get a job at the end of this process.
But my whole goal is to be able to create awesome prompts, right? I'll create these prompts that everybody will jump into, and I'll be able to get to all the answers. No, I'm just kidding. But what are colleges doing, right, to get to this technology-based skills training? Like what technologies are hot? Why are people asking for that? And what are employers seeking on the back end?
Yeah, we tend to look at we generally as a community or a culture tend to look at the things we hear about in the news. So certainly data science, artificial intelligence, certain programming languages, you hear about those all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But again, regionally, there are things like wind turbine technicians. There are things like diesel mechanics, agricultural technologies that are very relevant regionally. And those are going to get you the jobs that you need if you live in that area. So really for our schools, we try to say, let's focus first regionally. Let's have a knowledge about national trends, and let's overlay that with your capabilities and figure out what our focus is going to be. So a lot of our schools, we recommend that they partner with chambers of commerce, with larger corporations, so that they can actually influence the curriculum to develop curriculum and majors and courses that are going to get those students jobs in those areas. So that's one area. It's just kind of where you're going to focus.
Yep.
And choosing the right technology.
That's a tough job. You're trying to find the hot job for this year based on education from 4 years ago and in the past someone took. Are there ways to actually make that easier for schools to figure out what's the right type of training and get them to the right high-paying, secure jobs?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So again, finding the right technologies is about partnering with your local corporations and local chambers of commerce, one, but also looking at trends at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And also we find that looking at trends in major course OPMs like Coursera, Udemy, edX, they may not, our schools may not agree of the effectiveness of those learning platforms, but they can't disagree with the amount of learners they're running through in the millions. And so those topics tend to bubble to the top, and you can use those as another data point to layer on top of your technology.
So you see that as a really strong demand signal for what topics are hot.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and you also see, for example, that organizations that are more tuned to actually being able to choose those types of courses or get that type of learning in place are probably going to attract the right people as well.
That's right. So if you layer things properly, you consider region, you consider national, you consider what's hot in more micro-credential environments on large platforms, you're probably going to come to a Venn diagram that is going to attract the right type of learner for your area, for your region and your school.
Now, is that learning going to be different? Like, do people like to consume the learning in a different way now? Is it more course-based? Is it experiential? Am I going to see in the multiverse? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of hype around generative AI and how that can, I've heard stories of, a holographic and a version of Shakespeare teaching you English. First, English is still very important. Communication is still very important, but we're seeing a lot of schools focus more on the practical, what is going to get you the job. Second, we are seeing changes in the way that things are taught, but it's not that big of a leap. And it's more of a, let's change to, as I said before, project-based learning. Let's make sure that these students have something to demonstrate that they have these skills at the end of their college career. So we're seeing a lot of changes in those types of teachings.
That's a big shift, right? So organizations need more of this technology-based learning, having this technology-based training in place. What do you think about this notion of skills versus everything else, like skills-based approach?
Yeah. So we're seeing massive adoption by corporations of skills-based hiring. So what that means is that they're no longer requiring a degree. They're not saying a degree isn't a good way to get skills. It's still a great way to get skills, but not everybody has that luxury, and they're recognizing that there are other ways. And those ways are increasing in the market through micro-credentials and other forms. So you're seeing a lot of jobs open up to students who don't necessarily have an associate's degree, but may have 3 or 4 micro-credentials in really key areas that can get their foot in the door.
Who's doing a good job? Give me examples of schools. Let's name names here that are actually doing a good job of getting the right skills in place, getting good job placements. I know that's on your end, but some examples of folks that are putting this in place.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a spectrum. So on one side of the spectrum, you have what you would expect, the Stanfords and the Harvards and Google, not a school, but moving into the education environment, partnering with the Coursera and offering really valuable, nationally recognized skills that are necessary. On the other side of the spectrum, we have a school called Southwestern University in rural Iowa, and they're doing a great job just focusing on partnering with local chambers of commerce, partnering with local corporations, and providing the skills that are important in their region, which happen to be very different from what you might learn on a Coursera nationally or what you might hear of in the news.
So somewhere sitting in Creston, Iowa, we got this community college that's cranking out some great skills. Graduates are getting some value out of it. Sounds like
they're getting jobs. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, they're getting jobs. Yeah. It sounds like we're getting to that. Wasn't there a Harvard continuing education guy with a 60-year curriculum? Did you hear about this before?
I haven't, no.
So the idea with the 60 curriculum model was the fact that you come in, you might do 2 years, you might then skip out, go 5 years back on the job, come back for your 2, and continuously always learning on the fly as skills change. So you might actually end up having to keep learning new skills across the base, and maybe you end up with a 6-year subscription to some college.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's more than that. That's definitely happening. But
lifelong learning, basically.
Yeah, from a business perspective, we tell colleges, look, the amount of people that don't have a degree out there and would like more education is always going to outnumber the incoming freshman class. That's a bigger business opportunity. And if you can offer them flexible ways to get their foot in the door, get the education they need, whether it be a degree or not, then you're going to be better off.
Wow, this is very, very interesting. So when we go back and we look at the employees, the colleges that get it and the employers that get it, because the employers are also training their own people individually, but you don't see that on the other end. Are we seeing as big of a skills gap as we did in the past?
It really depends. So you and I see the trend being this number one, the college. Some colleges have very capable staff and faculty and administration that keep up with changes very rapidly. We have a lot of examples of that. I was just at one yesterday at Southeastern University in Florida. Some have struggled though, and then there's also technologies that just adapt so quickly that there's really no way in a year-based or semester-based world to keep up. You're going to be by nature at least 6 months behind any technology change because you have to develop new curriculum for the next semester. So skills gaps exists, but it depends on the skill and it depends on the school.
So skills are hot for colleges and universities because they've got to make sure that their graduates get placed, right? What's that importance of placement on rankings like U.S. News and World Report or Wall Street Journal? This is probably what's driving this, right? And driving people to come to their universities or colleges. You see some organizations have really good, co-op programs that also drive that as well, getting the skills as they get along in terms of payment model. It sounds like we're seeing a shift in higher education overall here.
Definitely there's a shift. Like many things, higher education tends to shift slower, but there are market dynamics right now that are significantly different that are changing that and making it go faster. But in terms of rankings, I think it depends on the ranking system and the algorithm. We are seeing more return on investment type rankings, which implies that
Wall Street Journal went nuts with that on the last one. So
I think that's happening. And, Wall Street Journal put out a survey that I think it was 56% of American families now don't think that college is worth the cost. So there's a lot of indicators that we need to focus more on jobs. And so what we recommend that schools do is start to take their curriculum course by course, align it to the jobs that it relates to, the skills that it relates to, and start building that into not only how they market the course, but how they offer the course and how they relate that course to maybe a changed major, but also how they teach the course, how they assess in the course, and how they provide demonstration in the form of a portfolio. So everything should be aligned to those skills so that you know what kind of job you can get and you can demonstrate those skills when you get out of college.
Wow. What are you most excited about walking in? EDUCAUSE is coming in a few months. What are you looking forward to seeing or hearing in terms of some of these big trends?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always interested to see, to meet schools, to meet, forward-thinking executives at schools and administrators at schools that are wanting to change and are passionate, and faculty members who are wanting to change and are faculty and are excited about it. So that's what I look forward to, and it's great that I get to have a job where we're actually enabling that through our technologies and our services. So if they're game for that change, we have services and capabilities to help them with that.
No, that's wonderful. And we're seeing this big shift, right? I mean, you're seeing the number of folks going to community college, then flipping out to another 2-year advanced college or moving out from there. We're seeing a lot of high school students come into community college, picking up classes that they might not be able to get in their high schools. So definitely heavy emphasis on where education is headed. One last thing for you, and I think this is kind of, very, very important as we think about, not just, jobs and skills in terms of where organizations are going, but is there a certain type of way to roll out this technology training that's more effective, right? So that people actually learn it better? Is there a certain method? Because some people say it's interactive. Some people say you said projects earlier were kind of helping. Like, how do you facilitate that to retain that knowledge and pick up a new skill, especially if you're older, like me? Maybe I'm trying to learn how to, do Python or code, or maybe I'm trying to learn prompt engineering. And I wouldn't know how to do that today. So how's that different by age? So.
Yeah, I think the general rule is, I don't know that there's a difference majorly by age. I think that, that certainly there's that perception. I don't know if there's a lot of data to back that up. But what you're seeing in terms of change is curriculum that more accurately mirrors the workforce.
So the simulation of what it's similar to a job, or like some kind of like a flow where someone can actually experience what it would be like in the real world. Is that what we're seeing more of?
Yeah, but it's not necessarily a technology simulation. It's a class activity, or it's an assignment where you have to work as a team, where you have to communicate professionally, where you have to adapt, where you have to do research in a modern world that maybe use just generative AI. But those are the things that we all have to do in the workplace that didn't used to be part of the college curriculum. And so you're seeing a lot of that curriculum change to match, the tools, the processes, the communications that are used in the workplace. And I think that's a positive thing.
Okay, so we're getting a left brain, right brain kind of impact, especially as we go along. Well, this has been wonderful. We're here with Chris Morgan, AVP for Product Innovation at Jenzibar. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
For having me.
Okay, awesome.
My pleasure.
Well, as you can see, we're talking a lot about higher education, learning, leadership, and of course, we're going to round it out. We're going to go to Mo, who's got something big to share with us. Before we do that, I'll do his introduction, and of course, we'll talk more about what's happening in his world. But Mo is the author of Give to Grow, Investment in Relationships to Build Your Business and Your Career. And so we've now gone across the spectrum, but Mark has helped complex organizations grow by skilling anything from business development skills, which are really important as you think about go-to-market strategies for lots of organizations. And of course, he's been able to take that into another level in terms of being able to do that in sales groups and training. I think that's really important, especially if you're in a company that's building a growth-oriented culture. He's the founder of Big, which we're talking about, which is the Bunnell Ideal Group, and the author of the Snowball System, which we're going to hear more about. Big has trained tens of thousands of professionals at hundreds of organizations, and he's live from Atlanta. You can follow him X at Mo, Bunnell. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Ray. No, I'm excited because I think what's underneath all the stuff we're going to talk about today is how to be a proactive change agent, and we're going to talk about all that.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard earlier, we've got to listen and ask the right questions to foster that. We're now talking about different training models that are out here, but let's talk about this system that you have. You've basically been helping people grow their book of business for 20 years. Why did you write Give to Grow?
Oh, it's a great question. You know the old saw, Ray, of it's not who you know, or it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I just completely disagree with that. It's what you know and who you know, and how strong is that relationship. It's not just that you know them from 20 years ago, but have you kept in touch? Have you added value? Do you have a mutually beneficial relationship? And when we wrote Give to Grow, the reason was because almost every company, every organization in the world has systems to train the what you know stuff, the technical skills, all the stuff that Dominic and Laura talked about asking questions, or Chris talked about, in higher ed. How do you teach the technical skills? Organizations usually have that dialed in. I mean, just doing the work can make you better at doing the work. But what they don't teach you how to do is deepen relationships. So we found 4 major ways that get in the way. I can explain what those are. We can dive deep into those kind of things. But the book Give to Grow basically teaches you how do you deepen relationships in a way that feels great and happens to grow your book of business.
That's a very, very important piece. Everybody's trying to figure out how to grow. We are in one of the most interesting economic times out here. And so it's part of it. So can you share the opening phrase in your book and why you chose that to grab the reader's attention? By the way, folks, this book is not out yet. So you're getting the preview. I believe it comes out the 27th of August.
Yeah.
So
August 27th. Yeah. So big font. I wake up every morning looking to help my friends succeed, and some just happen to be clients. And the mindset, obviously, Ray, that's underneath that is giving is the way to unleashing massive growth, but you've got to give away strategically and to the right people. And those are the exact kind of things that Give to Grow teaches people how to do.
You know, a lot of times, we give away the wrong things. You're right. And, it's not the right value to the right person at the right time. You were talking about that Venn diagram. And I think that's really important. And there's something different about folks that know how to do that. It's something about top performers, right? These folks that can figure out how to get there. What do they have in common? Are they just more lucky? Do they work harder? Is there something different in terms of how they get there?
It can appear to be luck, but it is not. When we've trained
come
over
on,
50,000.
we think it's luck. No,
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. There's got to be a technique here somewhere, right? So
there's definitely a technique, and I'll give 4 steps, and these are those 4 big unlocks that we provide in the book, and we can go back and forth and actually teach these to the audience right now. It's really exciting. So what the number one thing to remember, that's sort of a framework over all 4 of these things we can mention, is that in our just anecdotal research, I mean, not Dominic and Laura peer-reviewed research kind of stuff like they do, but more of a quick survey that we did with our clients. We found that top performers, and we're judging this by books of business or by sales or about amount of revenue that people bring in. Top performers are typically 10 times or more productive than average performers in their organizations. And that's not 10%, it's not 50%, 100%, it's 10 times. So what do they do differently? Well, we find 4 big things. One is they have the right mindset for growth. And the key underneath that to unpack is that I know you're friends with Marshall Goldsmith. He's been on the show. Well, that phrase, "What got you here won't get you there," is owned by him. It's fantastic. And the idea underneath the mindset is that the kind of moves that we do when we're doing work after we get the yes aren't just different than what we need to do to win the work. They're complete opposites. So being able to toggle quickly between I'm either delivering certainty on a yes or a contract that I've already got, or I'm creating possibility in the mind of the decision makers. Completely different things. The second out of the 4 things we learned, Ray, was that there are 5 major roadblocks that get in people's way. Things like, I can't do that, or I can't bring in the big deals, or I can't do business development. Those would be examples of that. I don't know what to do. I might do it wrong. A big one, I'm too busy to do this. Or the 5th, what is, I'm going to look bad, fear of rejection. Well, what top performers do is they know how to spot those lies, because they're only in our head. So we've got to do the spotting, because other people don't even hear these things that we say. They're able to spot those lies and quickly overcome them.
Oh, come on. Stop being a nag. Stop being a nag.
Yeah, exactly. I'm worried about being a nag. I don't know what to do. Top performers, they just make the offer. Hey,
they jump in.
Yeah, they didn't answer my last email, but that doesn't mean I can't invite them to the big webinar we're going to have. They just keep adding value. Yeah. And then do you want to go to someone else, or do you want me to go to 3rd and 4? I
want to hear 3rd and 4. I'm actually looking forward to it.
Well, the 3rd is interesting because it ties right back to what Dominic and Laura said. There's actually some steps to giving a decision maker the perfect experience to get a yes. We want to focus on their engagement. We want to fall in love with their problem, which is all about asking great questions. Thank you, Dominic and Laura. That was like a masterclass in doing that. We want to give them the experience of working with us. That's where we might be able to offer a 30-minute conversation, a half-day workshop. How can we shift from talking about what we do to doing what we do? That's the next thing. And the last part of my experience is always making a recommendation, always leaving every meeting with providing clarity on what we should do next. And then the fourth big bucket of things to wrap things up is, how do you implement? How do you succeed in the moment? How can you rise above the good news or bad news email or text that you just got? You won the deal or you didn't. How can you always, a phrase that people loving the book is, it's always our move and it's always our chance to be helpful. So how can we rise above the noise and avoid blowing in the winds of whatever the current news is, and always stay on track, always being proactive, and always staying on course to build the future that we want?
That's a great question, right? I mean, we have a plan, we follow the plan, we stick to it, then boom, conditions change. You have a chapter called Succeed in the Moment, which shows exactly how to mentally handle both the good and the bad news. Tell us how you handle that. What changes? Like, for example, the deal is over, or, we lost the account, like something like that.
Yeah. You got it. Well, that's such a great chapter. I just had somebody read an early copy of the book and email the other day, says it's the best chapter in a business book he's ever read. What we do in that is we talk about the psychology of bad is stronger than good. And there's some great, everything in the book's backed up by research. Roy Baumeister is sort of the leader when he did a big meta study, and he studied almost every domain in the human mind. Bad news is stronger than good news. We remember it more deeply, we remember it stronger, we remember it longer. So our brains are wired to avoid bad as opposed to shift to think about possibility or what might happen. So when we think about succeeding in the moment, we've got to be able to recognize that we're likely to stop or slow down our activities when we hear bad news. The meeting got canceled. We didn't win the deal. Jane can't make it today. You have 30 minutes instead of an hour. Sorry, things are busy around here. All these kind of bad news things can happen. And we've got to realize it's always our move. It's always a chance to be helpful. Feel the slight tinge of, wow, I hope for something better. And then immediately pop back up and offer generosity and an easy next step that's valuable for the client, and always keep moving forward.
It sounds like we're trying to get a give-get model and a good level of value exchange. Is that grossly simplifying this, or am I missing some nuance here?
One of the hardest things when you're in business development, or even trying to get a yes internally at an organization, is momentum is not in your favor. Getting a yes is all about momentum, whether it's external or internal. And one of the most powerful ways to get a yes is to give somebody the experience of working with you. We call that a give to get. And a quick story, Ray, might help with this. I've been married with my wife for over 30 years. And we were early in our relationship where we went out to dinner to celebrate something. I think it was a anniversary of either us or the other couple. I can't even remember. And Ray, we picked a restaurant that was like way above our limits at the time. Like, it was like, we shouldn't have been there. We couldn't even afford the appetizers. I don't know why we chose this place. And a sommelier comes up and starts talking about this great wine in the vineyard and the vintage and how great it tastes, all these things. And we're like hairy eyeballing each other, like, there's no way we can buy that bottle. Well, he left after a couple of minutes. That was like talking about yourself in a metaphor we'll have here. And he came back with a taste. All four of us got a tiny little taste of that wine. And Ray, we bought the bottle. And by the end of the night, we bought two.
Oh my God.
The point of that is, it's so much more powerful to get an experience of something than to hear about how great the experience is. And if your audience is thinking about, wow, I've never been able to get a yes for that project, or I've never been to win over that client, the number one thing you can do to unlock it, the master key to growth, is giving first. So if there's a way to go back to the decision makers and say, this is the perfect phrase, would it be helpful if I blank? It's a great way. We find that gets a yes more often than anything else. Would it be helpful if I led a half-day workshop talking about this? Would it be helpful if I drafted the project plan? Would it be helpful if I created a business case? Would it be helpful if I introduce you to somebody who's done this before? Something that's a give to get, like you said, that starts momentum and allows them to experience you and what you would do to get started. Now you're off to the races.
Would it be helpful if I booked a restaurant reservation at Atlas, Umi Sushi, or Bacchanalia? Which one?
You are so good. You're so good. You come to Atlanta and I'll treat you to any of those places. I'm a
Oh my
Bacchanalia
God.
fan.
Buckingham is awesome, actually. So we did not talk about this in the green room, for the record.
This is so good.
Okay. So what's the number one thing professionals should do to keep climbing in their careers, right? Because, people see some people burn out fast, right? We talked about burnout earlier. So you hit the peak, you come back down, you're like, oh my God, what do I do now? There's something special about those sales folks and the growth folks that have been there for a while, and they're doing something different. And you talk about that in your book.
We do. So two chapters after Succeed in the Moment is called Succeed in the Long Term. And that chapter is all about how to see the arc of your career and always be progressing so that you can make a bigger impact on the world and achieve your own goals for your family. And one of the most critical things we see that top performers do is they adopt some kind of a process around always climbing. The best practice I've seen around this is what we call, and it's in this chapter, Succeed in the Long Term, it's called cut to climb. Here's a real simple way to do it. If you think about a metaphor of impact, each rung in the ladder upwards is a higher level of impact. It's your impact on the world. It's the people you know. It's the things that you can offer others to start momentum forward. Well, time is the ladder. So if we want to climb up to a higher level of impact, we've by definition got to let go of something on the bottom because we only have so much time. So a real simple way to cut to climb, which is what we call this, is to put a calendar entry in your Outlook or whatever you use for your calendar, half an hour once a quarter. And all you do in that half hour is go back and look at the last quarter and say, I'm going to go find 50 hours that maybe it made sense for me to do those 50 hours in the past, but it does not make sense to me to do those same things going forward. 50 hours is roughly about 10% of our time. And what we see, it's the people who are always cutting to climb. They're always cutting off the bottom, lowest impact 50 hours, either by delegating it, eliminating it, giving it to somebody else, automating things. Automate, eliminate, delegate's a neat way to say that. And then by automate, eliminate, or delegating the bottom 50 hours and always finding what's the top 50 that I should go do. Establishing new relationships, getting a relationship with my boss, offering a give to get to some high value client we haven't started with, building strategic partnerships outside the organization. If I'm always doing a higher value thing and cutting off the bottom things, 10% every quarter, I think you have an analytical mind. I can tell. You can tell what compounding 10%, 1.1 to the however many quarters we've got, it doesn't take long to double and quadruple. It's all good. Yep.
It's the rule 72. We'll take it any day.
Yep.
So it's
well, tell people what that is. It's so fun. Like you divide the interest rate into 72 and you double in that amount
you take
of years, right?
Fine, a number of years. However you get the years, whatever the interest rate, if it gets to 72, and that's the number of years or the number of interest rates that you need to get to. So you work your way backward. So 8% interest rate, 9 years. 12% interest rate, well, take you 6. So kind of how the works.
You got it.
So
and because this 10% compounds quarterly, it goes even faster. So it's amazing.
Well, you do the same thing with relationships as well, right? Your network effect would actually work the same way too, right? Your ability to actually build a network that continues to compound and grow. We see this all the time. Like people get to the point in their career where they happen to know everybody, and then within 5 years, they know nobody because everybody retired or joined a board or is gone out of the game. So it's a very, very interesting thing. You've got to renew their networks along the way. So this is amazing. Your book is coming out. Tell us more about what's next for you. Your book comes out August 27th. What's next?
Yeah, you got it. Well, it's mostly just getting this book in as many hands as possible. You know, Ray, one of the things you feel pressure on as an author of a book called Give to Grow is to give a lot away. So we created a whole complete training course that's totally free and people don't even need, it's better if you have the book, but you don't even need to have the book. And that's at givetoggrow.info. People can go get that training right away, tons of downloads. And whether you buy the book or not, I'd say go to givetoggrow.info because you're going to get a wealth of information. And then what's next for me? I'm just out there telling people about that. Like the more people that can be impacted by this idea of growing their influence through generosity and helping others, the more people who do that, the more we can all impact the world.
You know, this is super useful, especially in the B2B world. Relationships are the heart of all this business. We buy from people we trust. We buy from people we like. And it's definitely some good advice here. So definitely get the book. Comes out August 27th. You can pick it up on Amazon or where books sold. And more importantly, follow Mo at MoBunnell on X, or what we still call Twitter. And of course, he's the author of Give to Grow. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Ray. It was fun. And
right.
we'll set up Bacchanalia soon.
Oh, anytime. I'm in that. Or you can even take me to South City Kitchen. I'm simple.
You're good. You're good.
See you in a bit. Oh, I miss MF. So anyways, talk to you later. Yep. We'll see you back. We'll see you guys all in the green room. So, all right. Well, as you can see, massive show, lots of learnings here. And more importantly, give you a quick summary of what we learned. We started out by talking about, what you really need to do to start thinking about your way of communications inside organizations. And the answer is a question. We start with Dominic and Laura, and what they did was share their STAR model, really improving manager-employee relationships. And it's really about listening more. Active listening makes a big difference, making sure people are heard, but more importantly, learning from that. Those are feedback loops that are going to be important. We see those feedback loops building in AI. They're mimicking great human interactions along the way. We also spent some time learning about what training and what technology training can do. People are looking at new types of skills, getting that in the right hands. It really improves people's careers. And this is definitely happening in higher ed, especially as they're trying to match students with the right jobs, with the best high-paying jobs. And this is why technology-based skills training is important. And Chris shared that with us from Jenzabar. But we rounded this out with Mo, really talking about how you are going to grow, how you actually reinvest in relationships and do this the right way. And it's more importantly thinking about how we actually create this new roadmap. How do we build this opportunity to kind of continue to give, get, and more importantly, use that to further your career and, of course, be really effective in creating those types of relationships. We will be back next week. Vala Afshar will join me as well. We are on episode 373, and we'll have some amazing guests. Anand Iyer, PhD MBA, Chief AI Officer at WellDoc. We got Frederick Furt, Google's first and former chief innovation evangelist, and author of the book, What's Next is Now, How to Live Future Friendly. We're definitely get a nice futurist perspective. And of course, Jeff Wetzler, the author of Ask. Tap into the hidden wisdom of people around you for unexpected breakthroughs in leadership and life. I can't wait to see what these folks are going to be up to. But of course, if it's 11 a.m. Pacific on a Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, please watch Disrupt TV. And more importantly, catch us live, catch us all replays on the Disrupt TV site on constellationr.com. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on, I think, every single platform we can think of: Apple, Spotify, and of course, X and LinkedIn. So thanks a lot. And thank you all for being on the show. And of course, we will see you all in the green room as we mentioned. So take care. Bye.